Hey, good morning, friends. Today is Friday, September the 12th, 2025, and the time now is 7:25 a.m. So, friends, I want to talk about Charlie Kirk and I want to talk about his assassination. I want to talk specifically about some of the things that I noticed as I watched the video of the assassination on YouTube. Friends, for the couple of things that I noticed as I watched the video on YouTube, one being how perfectly synchronized the assassination was. For example, friends, one being that during the Q&A session, during the interaction between Charlie Kirk and one of the attendees who asked a question about violence in the United States, the question that was asked, the response from Charlie Kirk or his attempted response, and the time of the bullet, the impact of the bullet, and even the sound of the spark as the shot was released. The fact that everything just came together so perfectly synchronized, it is very mind-boggling, it is strange, it is very interesting. There are also ironies given what was asked to Charlie Kirk, his response or attempted response, and the bullet's entry. And also, friends, seeing the human anatomy at work at a very interesting time. This assassination, friends, was no ordinary assassination. I think, honestly, this was a message. This was a message. The assassin, there are lots of speculation out there of who the assassin is or who the assassins were. And it is said that the FBI have arrested a couple of people and released them. Now, there is one particular person who is of interest, and it is shown that he was wearing a military veteran's shirt, polo shirt. So it is very interesting, but this assassination, I believe, was no ordinary assassination. The assassin or assassins, whether we are talking about a lone wolf or an organized system, an organized institution, was sending a message and they wanted something dramatic. This was to scare the heck out of everyone, not just people who were talking, but people who might have ideas. Friends, I hope you tell me what you think by the end of this program. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? Counting or not counting gang violence. This was the interaction between Charlie Kirk and another person, a person who was asking a question during the Q&A session. And I'm going to read it again. Once again, friends, this person asked, do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? And Mr. Kirk answered, counting or not counting gang violence. This was a very interesting interaction between Charlie Kirk and the person asking the question, but it also presents irony. Let me start by saying, friends, watching a couple of videos of the event, Charlie Kirk, we have to give it to him. He is a very interesting person. He is very elegant in his ways, okay, well-spoken, and he doesn't care. And this is how many conservatives, Republicans, and those on the right present themselves. They don't care. I know. Now, one prominent Republican slash member of the right, who is also very much influential in the Republican Party and the right, Ben Shapiro, a commentator, smart person, always mentioned to his opponent during discussions or debate that facts doesn't care about your feelings. These guys don't care. But during the event, friends, you can see that the crowd was very much excited. They were happy and they have huge regard, high regards for Charlie Kirk. And he came in there. At some point, he was basically throwing hats to the crowd, basically make America great again hats, MAGA hats. In essence, we can say that Charlie Kirk was actually campaigning or rallying for Donald Trump. He is a strong supporter of Donald Trump. However, friends, as I continue to watch videos, One particular video, a segment of the video shows Charlie Kirk basically cheering up the crowd, okay, making the crowd excited and thanking them for being at the event, stating how massive the crowd was, and also stating something such as owning the liberals or something like that. We're going to take it to the liberals, okay? Something like that. Basically, what we are seeing in the United States is both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans, the left and the right, basically trolling each other. What Charlie Kirk was doing at the event, to an extent, was trolling. He was trolling. But that is not the point of this discussion. I just want to bring it to your attention. In terms of the assassination itself, once again, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to read the interaction between Charlie Kirk and the member of the crowd asking him the question about the violence in the United States. The person asking the question: do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? Charlie Kirk: counting or not counting gang violence. Once again, friends, I am going to read. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? Charlie Kirk: counting or not counting gang violence. At that point of the discussion, what it seems to me that Charlie Kirk was doing was trolling black people. He was stoking racism, racist sentiment against or towards black people. But it is very interesting that many in the right, many Republicans, and also as people like Charlie Kirk have done prior to his assassination, when you talk about violence in the United States, they basically trying to sway the conversation, okay, or redirect the conversation to what black people, the gangs are doing, rather than looking at violence in the United States in terms of its entirety. So he was asked about the number, whether he know of the numbers of violence, gun violence in the United States. Instead of him saying yes or no, or trying to broaden the discussion, he basically redirected the discussion basically to gang violence. And now the gang violence, with or without gang violence, part of what he was saying, Charlie Kirk, was basically saying, you mean black people? But many on the right, when they talk about violence, they only talk about what black people or Latinos or people of color are doing. They never incorporate white violence, especially white on white violence, or those mass shootings in schools and so on as part of violence. But it is very interesting that when Charlie Kirk was asked the question, once again, do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? He replied, Charlie Kirk: counting or not counting gang violence. At that moment, he was shot in the neck. It is interesting, the timing of the question, the timing of Charlie Kirk's response, and the entry of the bullet and the sound. Everything was so perfectly synchronized that it is scary. It seems to me as if, or it appears to me as if, this was pre-planned and that the shooter has had a speaker at where Charlie Kirk was supposed to be speaking, where he could basically hear the interaction and wait for the right time to basically release the perfect shot. And also, the shot, the gunshot, doesn't seem to come from far away, from the distance, from where the shooter was. The gunshot, I heard the gunshot as I watched the video at the very space where Charlie Kirk was sitting. It seems to me as if the gunshot was amplified. I don't know, I'm just asking a question or I'm just making a statement based on my own observation. But something is very interesting. Now, friends, over my years, and I am talking as a person born in Liberia, a country which saw about 36 years of turbulence, of which 14 years were years of all-out war. Of the 2 million people in the country, in Liberia, it is said that about 300,000 people died. And based on the source, it could be more or less. Also, it is said that about 1 million people left the country and the rest of the country basically just live in horrible condition or circumstances. However, I believe that many Liberians, as much as they've seen violence, many Liberians today and back then, yesteryears, I believe have not witnessed what they saw on the 10th of September, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I believe many Liberians have not seen that in the past during the Liberian Civil War. And for those who did, I believe when they saw that assassination, the bullet going in and Charlie Kirk's blood spilling out, I believe many cried because it brought vivid memories of the Liberian Civil War and the murder in Liberia during our civil wars. But it is interesting. I have witnessed over my years two spectacular events. And when I say spectacular, I don't mean to glorify. I mean spectacular because of the fact that these things were strange events that were just unbelievable. And these are two murders. One having to do with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and before him in 2020, the heartless murder of George Floyd. With George Floyd in 2020, we saw the officer kneeling on his neck as he basically cried that he couldn't breathe. And this man looked into the camera as a young lady was filming the whole event. And you can see that there wasn't any ounce of remorse from this officer or regret. The officer continued to kneel on George Floyd's neck and eventually killing him. Now with Charlie Kirk, we saw anatomy, the human anatomy, at its most glorified state. We saw the human anatomy at work. We saw a very vital artery or vein being basically ruptured and a person's blood spilling out. I don't mean to basically glorify what happened. I'm just saying, for Charlie Kirk's assassination, it's crazy because these are things that we see in movie. Basically, what the assassination is saying here, it's bringing to us, is art, is Hollywood, is movie coming to life, basically being a reality. I watch a movie, or there are segments of these movies, okay, shorts of these movies on YouTube, and we are talking about The Equalizer by Denzel Washington. There was a scene on a train with the Russian mob guys, and he fought and killed all of them brutally. One part of it, I think he grabbed some kind of sharp object and he stabbed the person in the throat, in the neck, and the blood was basically just pumping, shooting out. When I saw that video of what happened to Charlie Kirk, it's very scary, and that's exactly what I thought about the movie Equalizer. Now, my friends, I don't mean to glorify what happened to Charlie Kirk, but it demonstrates that things that we as society put out there as art can be replicated to become reality. It was a very scary situation, with Charlie Kirk being asked a question about gun violence in the United States, mass shooters or mass shooting in the United States. To him trying to limit the question, his answer to gun violence from the gangs in the United States. Okay, because what he was trying to say is removing gang violence, the rest of violence in the United States is not significant. I believe that's what he was trying to say. However, friends, from Mr. Kirk being asked the question, to him counting or not counting gang violence, to the sound of the bullet and the bullet entering his neck, and we as a people, as a global community, seeing his blood spilling out as his body leaned further sideways until he collapsed. He fell. It is scary. Once again, friends, I believe perhaps this shooter was not a lone wolf, was not a lone shooter. This was an institutional assassination. It is very scary then, because Charlie Kirk is not the opposition of the current administration in the United States. Charlie Kirk is a member of the Trump's team. Not per se that he is in the government, but he is in Trump's camp. The fact that someone closer to the president can be assassinated in such a way, it is a scary thing. America is a divided country, and it is scary. It is scary. However, the assassination was, I believe, to send a message. Now, the shooter could have just taken Charlie Kirk out in the head, knock him cold, it's finished. Guys, I apologize, I'm not glorifying anything here. However, the fact that the shooter aimed for the neck, and it doesn't seem as if this was a random, because from the interaction, Charlie Kirk was very much stable in his movement. In fact, watching videos of Charlie Kirk in his interaction with students and other people during discussion, he often hold in his hand the mic, and he often will sit and basically tilt his body in the manner in which he sat as he was assassinated. So that, we can say, has been his signature posture. This shooter could have taken him out anytime, but the fact that he waited for that moment. Charlie Kirk was asked about mass shooter. He mentioned gang violence. And at that instant, we heard a gunshot and then bullets into him and then blood spilling out. Friends, this was no ordinary murder or assassination. This was a message. This was a threat. Friends, the institution or the shooter, the person who took out Charlie Kirk, could have just taken him out by hitting him in the head. In that case, he's knocked out cold and it's over. But it seems that they were looking for dramatic effect. They were looking for a dramatic effect, hitting him in a position, in an area, at a point on his body or in his body where we could see something dramatic and something scary happen. This was a message to specific people in the world, specific people in the United States, and also to the rest of humanity. This was no ordinary murder. Now, friends, in terms of the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the reaction, people all over social media and throughout the world are reacting. There are many on the left in the United States and many on the right in the United States. The left, many are condemning it, and then you have the left, the streets of the left, many are jubilant, they are happy. And this is because to them, Charlie Kirk is someone who's been making lots of racist or derogatory, or belittling statement or remark or supporting dangerous things against the non-whites. And it is very interesting already, there is a particular video of Charlie Kirk stating something such as, in order for us, basically in the United States, to maintain the Second Amendment, somebody will have to die. And people are calling him out, calling out the irony of what he had supported and his death, the assassination. Now, on the right, many Republicans, whether we are talking about prominent Republicans in media, in government, and on the streets, are basically calling for blood. There are those who are talking about this is war, that the Republicans and the left should not tolerate it. That basically, they are saying some civil war remark. The United States, I believe, is basically experiencing a civil war. Of course, it is a cold civil war because this is just people randomly killing each other, but it hasn't become a full-blown civil war, a full-blown hot war. Now, in terms of those who are jubilant, I believe that many heard about the assassination, but did not look at the video before they make their reactionary videos. Because I believe, had they watched that video, the reaction that they released on social media would have been much different. You do not have to like or respect what Charlie Kirk is saying. You do not have to subscribe to his position. However, the assassination was a scary thing. Watching the video, I am traumatized, and I am from Liberia, a country which saw trauma for 14 years. There were assassination and murder in Liberia, brutal murder, many times worse and many times replicated than what we saw happen to Charlie Kirk. I am traumatized watching that video. Yes, I've seen movies and brutalities in movies, but we basically will say that, oh, it is just art. But seeing it happen in real time is bad. We saw a real-time assassination of someone, a young man, at the most vulnerable time, in the most vulnerable position, at the most vulnerable event. He was assassinated in school at a college during a Q&A session at an event. It is a bad thing. It is scary. You do not have to like Charlie Kirk, but if you're someone on social media saying this and that, if you're someone from this and that party in the United States or around the world, what happened to Charlie Kirk could happen to anybody. It shows how vulnerable we are as people in the world and in the United States. Now, for the assassin himself, I do not believe that he was a lone wolf. I do not believe that he was just a random person. I believe that this person does have training. This person was either an ex-military official, a sniper, or a professional assassin. Because what he did to Charlie Kirk, it doesn't seem that where he hit Mr. Kirk was a random part of his body. He shot Mr. Kirk as if he was aiming for the neck, for an artery, for a vein, to basically create a dramatic effect, to scare the hell out of everybody at the event in the United States and around the world, especially opponents of their thoughts, their beliefs. As a person who've experienced a lot, I do feel this was a sad assassination, a sad thing. I don't subscribe to Charlie Kirk's position on social, on ethical, on ethnic, on academic, or on financial or economic affairs. However, as someone who speaks on things happening around the world, social, political, economics, and so on, I could be a target as well. I do know I am vulnerable. Many of us, we are vulnerable. Where Mr. Kirk was shot, how he was shot, the time he was shot, what was happening when he was shot, the question that was asked, his answer, the time of the bullet, the sound, everything was so perfectly synchronized. It shows his vulnerability and our vulnerability as a people. Therefore, we need to be very careful. And honestly, friends, I hope that all of you out there, you are safe, and please continue to protect yourself. Continue to protect yourself. Now, friends, I am going to read this interaction again between the person who asked the question and Charlie Kirk, and I'll continue. The person spoke. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? Charlie Kirk responded, counting or not counting gang violence? Once again, the person asked, do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? Mr. Kirk responded, counting or not counting gang violence? It is interesting. The young man asked, bruh, do you have any idea? Do you have statistic of the mass shooters in the United States? Charlie Kirk narrowed the conversation, his response to gang violence. Perhaps he was saying, as I've said earlier, removing gang violence, mass shooter or mass shooting in the United States, it's not that much. That's what he was trying to say. Basically, he was poking finger at black people. But it is very interesting, as much as he was poking finger at black people, the irony in this case, he was shot at by a white person. People in the United States, many on the right, refuse every time to acknowledge murder and gun violence or violence in the United States, mass shooting in its entirety, as an American thing, as a thing in the United States that also include white America. They narrow their discussion to black America. The irony, as much as Charlie Kirk was pointing finger at black America, he was shot at by a white person. I don't know why he was assassinated. Charlie Kirk was never in government. Yes, he had a lot of connection to government officials, to Donald Trump. However, friends, he was a big person on social media, a magnificent in the Republican and right camp. MAGA loved him, they respected him. So he is someone who basically was the mover, one of the movers and shakers of the Republican Party and the right. Charlie Kirk go to universities all over the United States to engage in conversation with students and others. There are many who will say that Charlie Kirk, in his debates, he lose some and he wins some based on what his position is, based on his ability to present facts or fiction or whatsoever. But the assassination of Charlie Kirk, once again, I apologize for repeating myself, it's a threat to everybody. We need to take this seriously. Now, friends, one important thing that I want to add before I leave you is the fact that a couple of months ago, there were some Democratic government officials who were assassinated in the United States. One was a woman and her husband and their dog, and so on. Donald Trump hasn't even mentioned them, hasn't even said anything. With Charlie Kirk, he released a statement offering condolences. In fact, I watched part of the video of him talking about Charlie Kirk. It is very interesting that his facial expression doesn't even show any sign of remorse or of sadness. Someone needs to work with Trump in trying to make him much more of a human. The tough image is not working. But already with Charlie Kirk, we have videos on social media. There are videos of Air Force 2 or so transporting Charlie Kirk's body to Arizona. Donald Trump ordered that the flags of the United States in government buildings be flown half-staff. He didn't do that for the government officials, Democrats who were assassinated. This shows the divisiveness and the divide in the United States and the fact that the United States could be collapsing, which in this case is sad because it only strengthens American enemies. And it's humiliating for the United States. To an extent, the assassination demonstrates that the United States is unsafe and it's not as peaceful as many present. So many things are happening. Just recently, we saw the arrest of Korean workers at a plant in Georgia who came to the United States to basically train Americans. This is a very interesting event. But Charlie Kirk, I do believe, is going to become or has become a hero larger than what he was. He has become a saint in the Republican Party and could be also becoming a saint around the world for people who may see him as someone who died for his position, even though they may not like or they may not know exactly his position on things, especially on racial, economic, and other social matter. So it's very interesting. But he reminds me of a very famous person in history. And we are talking in this case of Jean-Paul Marat, a Frenchman during the French Revolution, who basically was writing names in his paper of people who he deemed opposition to the revolution. And these people were being killed. Now, he was assassinated by a young lady who basically believed that he was the one making the revolution worse because he was pointing fingers and more people were being assassinated. Now, the assassination did not bring peace to France. It basically made Jean-Paul Marat a hero in France. Now, friends, please tell me what you think, and I really want to know what you think. But friends, I'm going to end here. I want to thank you for being a member of the Echoing Voice community, my friends. But most especially and most importantly, or most important, friends, I want to thank you a lot for watching the Echoing Voice. Peace, my friends. Peace.